Welcome to this episode of The Garage with Dennis. We're here in Portland, Oregon to check out Steve Frisbie's shop, Steve's Auto Restoration, and check out some of the projects they have that are even contenders for things like America's Most Beautiful Roadster or the RIDLER at the Detroit Autorama. We do want to make sure and thank our sponsors, Royal Purple, the performance oil that outperforms, and our friends at Craftsman Tools. Make sure to go to craftsman.com and become a Craftsman Club member. Now, if you'd like to know more about what we're doing in the show, you can go to InTheGarageWithDennis.com, check out our Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook pages. But right now, the show is about to begin.
My name is Steve Frisbie. We're in Portland, Oregon, and I'm the owner of Steve's Auto Restorations. And what we do here is we build hot rods, custom cars, and do restoration work, ground-up restorations on antique and vintage cars, old show cars like we got one going right now. I actually fell in love with the automobile when I was actually very early. I can remember standing on the front seat of my dad's 1948 Plymouth, watching cars come down the street and asking my dad what kind of car it was. So to this day, I can still see that Plymouth wood grain dash. And of course, reaching back into your youth, now I've got a 48 Plymouth Coupe. But anyway, that's where it really started. But it went on through high school, and I had 3 different cars during high school, and you know, buy them and fix them up and personalize them, and that's what this whole hobby is about anyway. I wasn't necessarily the kid in high school with the fastest car, but my car was the cleanest and the prettiest. After high school, I went to work for Boeing aircraft, and I learned a lot of things. I always say that I learned enough at Boeing to be able to go out and apply what I've learned into the antique car and custom car and hot rod world. And so I worked for Boeing for about 10 years. I worked in their machinist department, their paint department, plating department, assembly department. So I really got to learn a lot of things that I could put into my car hobby, which I was doing, you know, after work and in the evenings and on weekends. Steve's Auto Restoration started one summer when I had a health issue, and I was off work for 3 or 4 months. And when I went back to work at Boeing, I just decided that life was too valuable and too short to go to work someplace where you really weren't happy every day. So I started in my garage, in a double-car garage where I lived, and hired a young guy, and it was just me and one guy for many years, actually. When I first started, I was working on restoration cars. So in other words, a Model A Ford had to go back a certain color, a certain type of wheel, a certain this, a certain that. And then I got involved in the big classics, like one of 2 540K Mercedes and Gullwings, and one only Frenet body Delahaye, and one of 5 Daimler Green Goddess, and other cars like that were limited production. And the nice thing about that, you still were limited on certain things, but when I'm restoring a car and I have a part missing or beyond repair, then I had to learn A, either how to make it or reproduce it, or B, who to go to have it reproduced. So I got to play in the vintage and classic car pool for a long time, and I think that is something that has been beneficial to me on what we do now, because when we altered into hot rods and custom cars and street rods, it was easy for me to, everybody wants, a guy who wants a 32 Highboy Roadster, he wants it to be different than everybody else's. Well, not so easy to do, since, you know, they've been building them forever. So we would design things, and it was just second nature for me to make some portion of the car really different and new, try to make it new. So I learned a lot of those fabrication skills from my old restoration days. But building, it's different to build a car for a concourse, and yes, it runs so that it can go on and off a trailer. But then building these cars to compete, where eventually the client's gonna drive them, you have to debug them before you let them go. But it depends on what you're building the car for. If you're building the car for a client that's going to show it to some good guy shows, or, you know, weekend events and things like that, you're building a certain kind of car. But if you're building a car to compete at higher levels like AMBR or the RIDLER or Ford, you're probably, that last 5% you got to go to is proportionally the most expensive part of the journey. And so you really have to approach it. You have to approach that right in the beginning. You want to start right out with that kind of goal. You don't want to get 2/3 of the way through a car and a guy says, all of a sudden he wants to go to RIDLER and he doesn't want to be disappointed. Well, you gotta flip the pancake over and start doing things over. So in the last 5% of the build for a high-end show car, the inspiration is there. It's just that your client is letting you unleash it. In other words, I can only build what a client will allow me. So I don't really have to find the inspiration. It's just a matter of unleashing it. Throughout the years that I've been building cars, it was more of a journey through the forest. I didn't have any particular goals to reach into the high-end cars. I'd done that with the antiques and classics, and that was very gratifying. It was gratifying to go to Pebble Beach and win first in class and have Jay Leno stick his head in the window and say, "Nice car." That was very gratifying, but it was never a goal. And when I got into the hot rods and customs, which really involves a lot of creativity and fabrication, my head and heart and soul was so deep into the creating and the building that I never thought of being Builder of the Year, say at the Grand National Roadster Show in 2001, or ending up taking cars in for AMBR competition, or with the Dodge truck going back to Detroit and becoming grade 8. It's that type of experience is something that for me just happened out of the journey. And now I can look back on some of those things and I can see how the journey took me there, but it was never my intention. But I'm really grateful that I got to travel that journey to those type of awards and achievements. And Darryl Starberg inducted me into his Hall of Fame, and things like that it's very gratifying to get those. It's a huge compliment because your peers are looking at you too, and you know, people that like your work or like what you do. And I think one of the important things for me was the feeling that when we built a car and we showed a car, it was nice to stand back and just see people look at a car you built and smile. And obviously that'd make the client happy, which made everybody, you know, when mama's happy, everybody's happy. But so that was very gratifying. I started my business in 1977, and I have seen a lot of evolvement in my business and in the hobby to begin in general. It looks to me like, I would say that right now we are still pretty in depth with the 30s cars, but we're moving into the 40s cars, and we're moving into the 50s cars. So it's just an evolution process. We have to try to stay on the cutting edge of every 10-year section of car evolvement. And so I think that we have the will and the desire and the interest to follow the car age group as it goes on. That's really where I see us staying, and I see the future of the hobby. I view this business more as a passion in a hobby. And it's just like anything else you can get involved in. There's so many things to be interested and to delve into in life. And even with the internet, it's made it so much easier to just educate yourself. Just pick a subject. It just depends. It just depends on what you get involved in. And that's where the car business and the hobby, the passion of it, gives you so much satisfaction. It's just a passionate obsession.
All right, that was a great segment. We had a lot of fun. Stay tuned for our tips, tricks, and reviews coming up next. In the garage this week is the 2014 Ford Fiesta 5-door hatchback SE. Now, the funny thing about this little vehicle is most of the test vehicles that we get at the Garage with Dennis are high option vehicles. This was completely the opposite. This is their base, bare bones vehicle that is a price point vehicle to sell to people looking for their first car. Now, it does have a lot of standard features that we'll go over in a moment, but the real idea of the Ford Fiesta at this level and this price point was to give someone a quality vehicle with truly some style and some fun at the wheel without breaking the bank. Starting with the exterior, it does come standard with 15-inch aluminum wheels, auto headlamps, dual power mirrors, and it does have an integrated spotter mirror, of course, a rear spoiler and rear wiper. The 5-speed manual had great shift points, and it was, like I said, a fun car to drive, but not overwhelming. Inside was a very simple and basic interior with bucket seats. It did have a 60-40 split rear seat, dual vanity mirrors, a leather-wrapped wheel, which did have a nice feel to it. One-touch up and down driver's window, ambient lighting, and it does, by the way, have 6-way adjustable front driver's seat and a 4-way adjustable front passenger seat. Overall, I found the comfort in the Ford Fiesta to be in the middle of the road. It was something that I could probably take on a long test drive, but again, at its price point, it was more than adequate and certainly a nice car versus a used car. With a base price of $16,050 and destination delivery of $795, bringing the total MSRP price as tested to $16,845. If you'd like to know more about this and other Ford vehicles, please go to Ford.com or check out our other reviews at InTheGarageWithDennis.com. That's going to wrap up this episode of The Garage with Dennis. We want to make sure and thank Steve Frisbie and all of the crew here at Steve's Auto Restoration for letting us take a peek at what they do best, build incredible cars. We also want to thank our sponsors one last time, Royal Purple, the performance oil that outperforms, and our friends at Craftsman Tools. On behalf of everyone involved with the show, we want to thank you for coming by and spending some time with us. If you'd like to know more about what we're doing or what Steve is doing here at Steve's Auto Restoration, go to realsteel.com or our website, InTheGarageWithDennis.com. We'll see you in the next episode.